All right. So let me know if I sound okay. I should. The mute button on the mic is a bit sticky. Hopefully we have a new mic soon. We're here right at the start of free practice, and we are about to get rolling with round 3. And this is going to be a weather round. We are going to have some inclement weather to deal with. Currently got our eyes locked on Trixit in the McLaren. And it's a bit damp. I believe the wet tires are the preferred tire as of right now. When it gets over to greasy, if it does before the end of the session, that would transition us over to slicks being the preferred tire. Trixit having a bit of a tangle with the Ferrari. Who is that Ferrari behind, as we have an around from the 969 Porsche of Guzman. Definitely a bit of argy-bargy here. Trixit giving a door and taking track position. Trixit with Douglas. I thought that was Douglas right behind. I believe that was Ouroboros in the black McLaren behind. We finally have our teams up on the board as well. So those drivers that are affiliated with the team will have their team below their driver name. Should help quite a bit in terms of trying to delegate teammates. A lot of them have similar liveries, or at least should have similar liveries, but that does not mean that they all do. Austria up into P2, but Ouroboros currently untouched, 33.1. Oh, Lucas, whenever the race starts, we should have plenty more than that. We have been pushing about 40 peak viewers throughout these races. Not many drivers or viewers tune in this early. They usually wait until after free practice and qualifying. It still just is right at the beginning of free practice. And Mick Schumacher joining Cadillac Formula One. Michael D, yes, Michael D is in a Merc. Just the one Merc. Just the one Mercedes. And Lucas, you are very quick in the Mercedes, and I'd say maybe a bit of a madman in choosing one. Oh, yep, you are right. Iceberg, a new choice, and I think a first time this season for Iceberg in the Mercedes. I think this may be a season debut. Iceberg raced with us the previous round. I don't believe too committed to the championship, but has definitely been racing some with us periodically throughout the seasons. And has, thank you for the subscription. Looking forward to doing the Bathurst 12-hour with the Aztec Racing guys here in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think. 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think 2 weeks. We are just in free practices. Ormiston takes the top spot, dipping us down into the 32s, which is only inevitable as the track is improving. We are going to be on slick tires now, off of the wets. No rain expected from here to the end. It was quite tight at the top. Just a few thousand separating P1 and P3, but Ouroboros comes in and with the rapidly improving track, disrupts that party. There are a lot of Mustangs in just about any series about now, it seems. Mustang seeming to be a fan favorite for a lot of drivers, a lot of teams. Now, I don't know if I'd want to be in a Mustang for the Bathurst 12-hour. That'd maybe be a bit risky, but the top speed would be very nice up the mountain straight and down the Conrad straight, especially across the start-finish line. Ouroboros in the Animus Racing Pacifica, all blacked out McLaren 720S. There's two cars that if we are going to get anything, we should be getting those two cars, and it's the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 Evo and then the Corvette Z06C or C8 Z06 GT3R, as we have had a driver go off on the left-hand side. It was a Porsche. It was a red Porsche. Not sure which Porsche it was. It was not Guzman. I believe it may have been Rogue. Sideways and off into the wall. Yes, if we are going to get any cars, we're going to get the two new additions to the SRO series, to the SRO season. That's if we get any cars. I'm just saying if we are to be getting any cars, those two would be the ones that we would get, but I believe that I don't think we're going to be getting any more, I should say. Ormiston goes a little bit faster. Still no one down into the 31s with Ouroboros yet. But the global SRO series is Trixit goes trip zip with Ormiston, both 112 thousandths of a second off of that time of Ouroboros. But in the global SRO series, the Aston Martin has been largely swapped out for the Aston Martin GT3 Evo, and then the new addition as well of the Corvette Z06 GT3R. If we get either of those cars, it will be a free update. I don't believe it's going to be a DLC, as they have already announced the Ultimate Edition for ACC is Iceberg in the Mercedes. 131.8 now takes the top spot. Giant, as that was a very near miss between the front end of Iceberg and the BMW there. I think that may have been Bobby R. Rowden there. And I believe, yes, it was. So close call between those two. Would be very cool if we could get the Corvette and the Aston Martin, and if we get either of those things, they will be the last things that we get. I don't think we're going to be getting any more tracks, any more classes, nothing like that. If we get any more cars, it will be those two cars. The 12 Hours of Bathurst is with the Aztec Racing group. If you are in my Discord, Lucas, you can find their Discord posted in there with the Endurance Cup schedule. Now, myself and Zalexi will be kind of trading off the streaming of that series. So I have not made a channel for Aztec Racing yet, which I do need to. But there is an invite to the Discord, and has, if you would be able to, would you mind dropping an invite in the ACC chat in the Discord? As Brute with a 31.5, as the track is still starting to improve. A big slide, a big wiggle from Brute in the Porsche, though, being rear-engined and in the wet. While it is very quick, the handling does kind of favor wet driving. The Porsche there just going for a wild ride, bit of a rodeo there coming out of turn 5. Ormiston takes the top spot back, 130.8, and as the track improves, we will just continue to drop the times down. Yes, Zalexi and I will be trading off a bit throughout that season, and likely doing some co-commentary for some of the longer endurance events. But for the 12-hour and the two 24-hour races coming up, the 12 hours of Bathurst, 24 hours of Spa, the 24 hours of Nordschleife, I will be doing those full streams, as I love to do. Some of you guys may be able to remember the 24 hours in Hell. Lucas, I know you remember that. You were right there alongside me doing the full 24-hour solo. And I was not solo for the full 24 hours, but I did do the full 24 hours non-stop. Zalexi, good streamer, good talent. Maybe airs, in my opinion, a bit more to the F1 side of things, channeling the inner Martin Brundle. But there's nothing wrong with that. So my Discord is actually going to be in the Twitch chat. If you scroll up just a little bit, the Discord will pop up there. But I actually can, I believe, go ahead and copy that, and I'll paste it in here real quick. But throughout the stream, my Discord will be dropped in the Twitch chat along with the GFR Discord. So if you would like to join GoFast Racing and get involved with GoFast Racing on console, this is the fastest league on console, so you should at least be ready to have quite the challenge to stand up to. But if you'd like to test your skills among some of the fastest with ACC on console, this is definitely going to be the place to do it. Prieto in the Mustang, teammate to Ouroboros and the Animus Racing Pacific team, 130.520, as we are inching closer and closer to the sub-30s. And going to peel off to the left-hand side of the track is Prieto, and into the pit lane. We'll go back on board with Trixit. And don't let me forget, I need to make you an Aztec Racing channel in my Discord so that you have full control over it, and you can post your event things there in the Discord. Yeah, if you just want to go to the ACC chat and post an invite to the ATR Discord, that would be able to do that. You can make it a permanent link. I will make you a channel, and from that channel you will be able to control all things Aztec Racing in my Discord, as I do with all of the leagues that I am associated with. to at least give a link back if anyone joins the stream, sees racing that they like, and wants to go ahead and get involved with it. So there you go, Din Din and Lucas. I believe, Lucas, you are in the Discord. I believe you were. And Din Din, you can join Aztec Racing League there and get involved with the ATRL Endurance Cup that will be going on for the long future over the next 6 months or so. And that 24 Hours of the Nordschleife will be held on my birthday, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Now the times are really going to start dropping down as we have had a peak of sunlight. It will give us about one lap of sub 30 times, I believe. Ormiston definitely going to take advantage of this and try and stretch out the pace a bit and see what he can do with these fast conditions. And a big slide coming out of 5. Those slick tires probably a bit cool, as the track has been slightly damp and greasy. And nope, it's going to be a pit lane entry practice for Ormiston. Very difficult pit lane here, is trying to push it, almost went 2 tires into the grass, and a good practice stop for Ormiston, as Aramich is going to be our first driver into the sub-30s. 129.560, but not really going to mean too much, as I believe qualifying is going to be quite wet. But still, just a few more seconds here in free practice before we get transitioned over to qualifying. Platypus in the Mercedes as well. As the times are really dropping now. And the Elmer's Racing Team Glue boys currently P2 and P3 in the Mercedes. But we are about to get started with qualifying. And remember, our qualifying is a split quali between the 2 classes. We have a Pro class and an AM class. The white numbers on the, or I guess the white boxed numbers on the leaderboard are going to be your Pro drivers. And the gray boxed numbers are going to be your AM drivers. So it will be AMs out first for the first 10 minutes of qualifying, and then we will transition over to the latter 10 minutes of qualifying, in which our pros will take to the track. And a good pit stop practice here for Platypus. Again, running wide into the pit lane and then trying to get it stopped and onto the pit limiter. Looked to be a clean stop for Platypus. And just a few more drivers yet to come across the line. We'll go on with Chandler with M&M Racing. In the 083 Ford Mustang. Candy red with white racing stripes. Yes, there are 46 cars here today, and we are expecting rain. It's going to be quite chaotic. It's also one of the reasons why we are doing a split qualifier. So anyway, that is going to bring an end to practice. And oh, it is dry for quali. Who is out first? It's a Mustang. It is Nate, but not quite going to be out first, as it is going to be the Ferrari of Nightwalker. First out of pit lane. Quite a bit of room to breathe. No one in front or behind. Some good track position. And as long as the lap stays valid, needs to make it around the track, get back around to the start-finish line, and then start the flying lap. Try and get the tires and brakes warmed up as much as possible on this lap. And then we'll go for our qualifying lap. So down into turn 4 for Nightwalker. Still trying to get those tires warmed up. Could hear a bit of understeer, the tires squealing. Now through 6. Keeping off of the curbs, trying to get those tires warmed up. And then 7 and 8. Out onto the sleeping policeman. Now the tricky downhill right-hander of turn 9, where you got to try and float the car as far to the outside, but don't want to get too far on that outside curb as you will bottom out the car, and then out of the final corner and across the line. We'll get started with this lap. Thank you, Marvy. I am very proud of them, but I have to thank Popolski with XCL for helping me with the design. And now up the straight out of turn 1, going up through the kink of 2. Yes, that is turn 2. The uphill right-hand hairpin is turn 3. And a bit of a miss of the apex there. There's definitely going to be some time lost, so we'll see if this is going to be the pole position for AM. Will be momentarily as long as this lap stays valid. Now for the downhill right-hander of turn 4. Could go a bit wider on entry there. Is the track limit's very generous here at Red Bull Ring. You are able to go out very, very wide and set up for the entry into the corner. Not really wanting to get onto that inside curb, slightly raised curbing there. Same thing around turn 7, but through turn 8, you can use both the inside and outside curves to try and carry as much speed as possible. Now for turn 9 here, you are going to get very, very wide. It could honestly go a bit wider. When our pros go through there, you will see their right-hand tires all the way out on that outside curbing. Now out of the final corner, we'll see what the lap for AM to beat is going to be. It's 1:30.862. And then coming up just behind, 1:30.277 from Nate, who I believe is having a bit of a connection issue. Sierra goes fastest with a 1:29.787. Leclerc goes next fastest to 1:26 or 1:29.6. Now Tychopath goes fastest with a 1:29.4. Times are dropping very, very quickly. I use a restreaming service called Lightstream, and I do have to pay for it, so that's what the Twitch subscriptions go towards, is just trying to cover the cost of that. It is about $25 a month for the quality that I am streaming. So when you guys watch ads and subscribe to the Twitch, you are helping pay for those overlays. And as of right now, it's right about just covering the overlays. Tychopath in the McLaren, currently the pole sitter for the AM class. We do a bit of experimenting with streams, finding out different things all the time about the capabilities of consoles for broadcasting and overlays and things like that. Sierra goes fastest. Manelli slops in right behind. We'll see if Tychopath is able to bring any more time up to the pole position. No, not going to be an improvement. Sierra in the Lexus, which will be very, very strong here down the straights, is likely going to be the fastest car tonight. And as long as you can get the power down at the exit of turn 1, should very easily have the fastest time through sector 1. rolling right along behind the Mad Panda Mercedes of Michael D. Michael D will bow out as the 999 Lexus of Sierra comes through turn 6, then 7. He's got a Ferrari right behind, though. That does seem to be the 555 of Manelli. This is your two drivers currently battling for pole position. Sierra lets Manelli go right on by. Sierra going to take advantage and try and use some slipstream here, as we've got about 3 minutes 40 seconds left in AM qualifying. The majority of the AM field has qualified. Actually, all of our AMs have qualified. And that low rumble throaty V8 from the Lexus RCF GT3. Out of turn 1, roaring up the straight, trying to chase down that Ferrari up ahead. I think just outside of slipstream range, which is kind of where you want to be. You don't really want to be in that dirty air zone. Sierra getting about a dead even exit of turn 3 with Manelli. Could really be setting up for some good draft out of turn 8 into turn 9 and possibly even out of the final corner. Don't want to be dealing with too much dirty air, though. This right here between these two is going to be your battle for pole position. And as of right now, it does look like Sierra has been the one to close the gap between the two. A bit of understeer from the Lexus. This is where the Lexus kind of loses time to the better handling Ferrari. But both of these drivers looking for an improvement on this lap. Will have 2 more opportunities when they come to the line this next lap, and then 1 more should they stay out with their tires and fuel. It's not going to be an improvement from either. Don't have enough time to get back into the pit lane and come back out, try for an improvement. We will see what they are going to be able to bring to the table, or has our pole position already been set? Manelli dives out, invalidates this lap. Can't waste too much time, though, as they are right on the margin for going for another lap. We'll see if Sierra is going to be able to make it around. About 1 minute and 30 seconds, somewhere around 1.5 minutes for these drivers. Minute 29.3 currently the pole position, but in terms of going for another lap, you got to think about that in terms of your eligibility for that extra lap. Now, for the majority of those drivers just now coming across the start-finish line, and those who have gone past in the last 20 seconds or so, are not going to be able to get another qualifying lap when they come to the line. The clock will be at 10 minutes, and that means that AM qualifying is over. Our pros will start rolling out here in 48 seconds, and then we will be started with pro qualifying. Sierra hoping for an improvement here. If it's not an improvement, going to have to go for 1 more. It is an improvement, 29.110. And if we hop over to our pros, they are queuing up in the pit lane, ready to get started with their qualifying. And who is that at the front? I wouldn't think it'd be anyone other than Ormiston. But we will have to see. No, it's not Ormiston. It's actually Peach at the front. Sierra into the pit lane, not going to have any insurance for pole. Manelli trying to find some improvement. Tycho Path, P4 will not improve. Bradzilla will not improve. And those drivers that have just come across the line will be able to get another lap in. Tyler James in the Ferrari out of the final corner with the 970 of Clint in the Mustang behind. Tyler James goes up to P19. Clint does not improve, and that's going to bring an end to the qualifying for those two drivers there. The 51 of Leclerc across the line, currently P7, goes up to P5. And now who else to come across the line? Manelli in the Ferrari, as our pros have exited the pit lane. Benelli trying to take the pole position back, going all the way outside, trying to find whatever time is left. It is the final AM driver currently out on track across the line. Is it going to be enough to take the AM pole position? Staying in it, it's got to be, and it is by 0.05 of a second. It is good enough, a 29.060. And yeah, I did see that you were having some internet issues there. It's Prieto who will lead the pros out of the pit lane and across the line. And Prieto will set the bar for the pro field as long as this lap is valid, going all the way to the outside with those track limits. Let's actually go on board. As this is going to be the first flying lap of the pro qualifying session. And all the way to the outside, the right-hand tires on the left-hand curbing. That is how wide our pro drivers are going to be around here at the Red Bull Ring. Looking for times into the 1:26s, but I don't think we're going to see them with fast conditions though. If we get a touch of optimum right at the very end, we could see some 26s, but currently looking for 27s and 28s. Once again, very, very wide, setting up for the long left-hander of turn 6. Now through 7, down a gear, rotate the car back on the throttle once you get past that apex, and then really relying on the inside curve of 7, going out to 8. Now for 9, going to get very, very wide, just like turn 4 once again. Same thing, very, very wide throughout into the final corner, but don't want to stay out that wide for too long, as you will bottom the car out on that curb. 28.7 from Ouroboros drops us down into the sub-29s, our first driver in the sub-29s. Our AM drivers tried to get really close, and Benelli did get very close, a 29.0. Iceberg and Aramich. Iceberg 53 thousandths off of the time set by Ouroboros in the McLaren. And it is heavy swinging and hard hitting here in Pro, as our drivers here tend to put on a show for qualifying. It's typically my favorite part of the night. Ouroboros looking to hold on to the pole position, looking to buy some insurance. Ketu in the NSX, a 10th off of our pole position so far. With quite a few cars on track, we may get some more rubber down. We may possibly be looking at optimum conditions. It would come very, very late in this qualifying though, but that's where we would start to get our absolute alien times. 28.382 from Ouroboros, tricks it just 1/100th of a second off. And it's Ormiston with a 28.220. We are getting closer and closer to that 27-second lap. A big slide from the number 11 Mustang of Salinas. Ketu finds a bit of improvement in the NSX. And have all of our pros set a valid lap. Actually, no, quite a large handful of our pro field yet to set a lap, but let's take a look at that field again. 47 drivers registered and entered here tonight. 47 cars on track. It is going to be a wild one, and we are expecting weather this race. Don't know whether or not, no pun intended. whether or not we will see rain in the early stages or in the late stages. Pit strategy also going to become a bit of a factor as well, as it is a 5-second reward, 5 seconds slower of a stop if you decide to come in and not take tires. It's a 30-second stop with tires, 25-second stop without tires. Depending on the wet weather, that may be the move, staying on wet tires. That is weather permitting. 27.912 from Ormiston. That's going to drop us into the sub-28s, our first sub-28, and we do get optimum conditions. Wasn't full optimum for Ormiston on that previous lap. And we may see a few of our pros come into the pit lane shortly. But now the times are going to be dropping. And Lucas, we typically don't see too many issues with disconnections with the weather. I'd honestly be surprised if we do. Platypus into the pit lane, likely to put some fresh tires and fuel in and give it another go. Now look at our AM field. Those top two are going to be one behind the other as it stands right now. P14 and P16 over on up to P15, P17. As your mom in the McLaren jumps up into P2. Still over a quarter of a second from the Ford Mustang of Ormiston. Very, very quick driver in the Mustang when the track is suited to it. Yes, I do not believe that we're going to be having any issues. And now trying to build a bit of a buffer. Is this going to be some team working here? Trying to find a hole to jump into. I think maybe wanted a couple cars to grab some slipstream off of. This next lap not going to really be good enough for a flying lap with that slower exit. Prieto up into P2 now. And I think Prieto possibly went into the pit lane. I'm not 100% sure. No. Okay. Currently Ormiston, the only driver in the sub-28s. But he's not going to be the only one there by the end of this qualifying, that is for sure. Do we have any yet to qualify still? Robinson in the number 31 Porsche still yet to qualify. That is the only driver that has not set a valid lap time. The 416 of Slapshot creating a bit of a buffer. Who is Slapshot waiting on? Is Slapshot waiting on the teammate to come around? I see the 416 McLaren slow and stopped on the track. And now it's not something I would recommend doing, but I think possibly waiting for the teammate to try and have a bit of teamwork with the slipstream. Now we are going to be starting our final lap of qualifying as our current pole sitter, 27.912, the time to beat. We'll see if he can bring an improvement as he comes across the line. It is an improvement, 27.600, and that's going to be it for Ormiston. Thinks it's enough for pole position and will come into the pit lane. Douglas, P8, will do no better. F-Bomb, P15, will do no better. Dingham actually just rolling out of the pit lane, but not going to have enough time to come around the track. Guzman, P21, Francisco, P22. And a good bit of our field currently in the pit lane. Prieto still out. And we'll have a few more coming to the line. I believe the 24 of Brute is going to bring an end to the qualifying. Will be our first driver to come across the line to finish their qualifying. Currently P16 trying to find an improvement. As the clock hits 0, currently P16 goes up to P11, the number 15 behind. Good enough for P29, the 221 of Giant. Good enough for P9, the 3 of Ouroboros across the line. Good enough for P5, the 210 of Prieto. Stays P2, the 86 of Trixit. Stays P6, the 88 of Harrell. Stays P21, the 55 if I can find the 55 of Zoenom in the Porsche. Currently P32. Stays P32. The 34 coming into the pit lane. The 420 of Mad Psycaster out of the final corner, looking for some improvement. Currently P26 goes up to P24. The 7 of Marvy in the Aston Martin in the AMR Racing colors, coming out of the final corner, has the 21 is a big slide out of the final corner. I don't think it's going to be an improvement. Marvy currently P19, stays P19. Platypus goes up to P3. The 71 of Your Mom behind stays P4. Into the session, that is no biggie, and then we'll read the qualifying order. So a bit odd there, but hey, things happen, so we'll get into the session momentarily. Hopefully it wasn't a mass disconnect, but let me know in the chat if it was. Well, Lucas, we have run many 40-plus driver races with this field, and hopefully it wasn't a server crash. And no, it was not. So we will get right back into the session, no problem. And we did not lose any drivers. I was the only one that disconnected, which is very odd, considering that hardly ever happens, but a bit weird there, especially for me to disconnect, but the field is set and it is currently raining, so it's going to be a wet start. It was a crazy qualifying, not as crazy as we have seen with GFR. And this is going to be a crazy race start. Currently full wet. Everyone should be on wet tires. The rain is going to dissipate, but for at least the first half of the race, it is going to be a wet track now. That may open up the possibility for the gamble. And this is where I recommend drivers to maybe have the stream turned on. I know you don't like to hear me yap while you're driving, but I am going to be your weatherman, your meteorologist. I will be keeping tabs with the rain and giving updates as the time progresses. So if you'd like to have some in-car weather radio, I'd say maybe turn on the stream and have a listen in while we are going on, as there have been some times where maybe my weather predictions have helped a few drivers. Anyway, we are about 7 seconds away from engines fired. Hopefully everybody's got slick or wet tires on, got the slick tires off, and also maybe looking at the pit strategy, making sure that the pit strategy has wet tires. Just in case, there's going to be quite a bit of changing up the pit strategy. And we'll have to see if we are dry at the end or not. Could be wet the whole way. And then you start to get into a bit of the strategy there where maybe with your starting setup, do you load it up with 45 minutes of fuel? Do you put 45 minutes of fuel in it anyway? Many drivers opt to leave the fuel out, as it does make things a bit better in terms of handling and speed in the early race. But now, do you take the gamble, fill it up with fuel, see what you are going to be able to do with the pit strategy? Hope for rain the whole time, and then you can just come in. I mean, I guess there is a required stop, so there's no reason to not put any fuel in or to go with the full fuel load, but there is the possibility of the no tire change, which if it is wet, the no tire change is going to be the correct tire strategy to go with, as you would save that time in the pit lane. But anyway, quite the large field, and our AM pole sitter is actually going to be right beside his AM rival of Sierra. Manelli versus Sierra are going to be side by side for the race start. We'll see what we are going to be looking at for this race. Now, I can tell you one thing: you are going to want to be at the front of the field, and while a lot of times drivers have a fight for track position, what you're going to be fighting for here at the beginning of this race is visibility. There's going to be a lot of spray kicked up, and there is not going to be much to see. As when this race gets kicked off, those drivers who are back in the mid-pack and definitely back in the back of the pack are going to have a hard time seeing what's going on up ahead. We'll hope that we don't have any bowling at turn 1, but 47 drivers lined up on the grid as we go 2 wide as we come through the final 2 corners and get ready to get started with this race. Season 4 of GoFAST Racing GT3. This is the 3rd round of this season. First weather race of the season, and hopefully it is not chaos. Lined up 2 by 2 as they come to the line, the spray already surmounting a bit as we await the green flag. And green, green, green. It's a bit of a spin, a bad stop or a bad start from the Mustangs. And they are 3 and 4 wide behind, all jockeying for position, some going out, abandoning the track and going onto the painted tarmac. It is absolute chaos behind as they are 3 and 4 abreast. We go back on with our leaders at the front. And it's actually Ormiston who has lost out. And it's, I believe, Prieto in the Mustang that has taken the lead of this race. And your mom in the McLaren has also joined in, as we do have what looked to be a little bit of an incident further back in the field. But this is an absolutely monstrous field coming down into turn 4. And so far, no incidents. I mean, many places, especially here with the conditions that we have with this rain, that's completely unheard of. And while they are 2 and 3 wide through some parts where you really don't want to be, as we have had 2 offs behind Marvy, the Aston Martin, involved in that, and Devin Lingard, the 33 Ferrari. But Prieto out in front trying to run away. We have had another incident, the number 83. If I can find the 83. There's quite a few cars to sort through. That is Chandler in the Mustang in that 83. Touch of damage on the front of that car. Now we let everyone kind of get comfortable, get into their separate areas. The 86 of Trixit has fallen down a good ways, and we got some battles starting to brew. Rain, as I always say, the great equalizer. We've got battles up ahead. Douglas with Ketu and Slapshot, as Slapshot has actually made a bit of a mistake, but are we going to go 3 wide into turn 4? And yes, we are. Ketu eyeing the opportunity at the inside of 4 and maybe thinking that Douglas and Slap would kind of take each other out there. It did not happen, obviously. But an absolutely huge field in the wet, and we have had an incident behind. Number 5 of Autry around backwards. Touch of damage on that Ferrari 296, waiting for the opportunity to get back onto the racing surface. Ouroboros chasing down the McLaren of your mom. Side by side into the final corner, Ouroboros will have the inside. Slap forced to take the slower line around the outside. Now another three-way fight, this for the last spot on the podium. Ouroboros leads both Slap and Platypus. Platypus opting to try and go around the outside. And how did they not make contact? And a big slide from Ouroboros, the painted tarmac, very slippery out there. And what is going on? Aramich, all 4 tires off in the grass, cuts across, somehow finds an opening for this overtake, and is he going to get 3 for 1 up through turns 2 and 3? I think so. Somehow slots and gets 3 positions away, finds himself up onto the last spot of the podium, right in front of the Mercedes of Platypus. And then now those two will go side by side with Slap and Ouroboros right behind, doing the exact same thing. Don't want to be around the outside at turn 4, but it does give you the inside at 5 and 6. And now maybe Brute having a look up the inside at 6. Trying to put the nose of that Porsche inside at 7. It's not really going to work. And the spray doesn't really seem to be too bad. Go on board with Slapshot here as both Brute and your mom side by side into the penultimate corner. Brute, I think they did make a bit of contact there. Now just having to slot behind the rain. Not too bad. The rain is going to stop. It's just going to be a quick shower at the beginning of this race. 4 cars all in a bunch coming into turn 1. Everyone staying away from the deadly curves. We've got 6 cars involved in this fight. 7, 8. It's a long train going back. And it is headed by the McLaren of your mom. Brute and the Porsche behind, the teammate of Slapshot trying to get up there with the teammate of your mom as they have a Porsche splitting the two of them. And oh no, Peach around at turn 3. I think that may have been an involuntary touch. Is going to have a slight opening, is not going to be able to go for it, and is now stuck waiting. Aramich with the battling Mercedes and McLaren of Platypus and Ouroboros behind. We go back just a touch more, then it's your mom, Brute, and Slap fighting here. Ketu and Douglas. Ketu actually slotting ahead at the Sector 2 timing line and getting that position taken away. And what do we have at the front? It's Mustang versus Mustang. No, what has happened behind? The 711 Porsche of Rogue trying to rejoin the 83 of Chandler off, and I think trying to allow drivers to recover lost time or give some positions back. Platypus, Mitch, and Ouroboros still in this 3-way fight for position, and right behind your mom, Brute, and Slapshot. Your mom actually going to slot behind as this has done a complete 180. It's now Slapshot ahead of Brute, ahead of your mom. And then Ketu and Douglas fighting behind. 15. And no, what has happened? Slapshot somehow gets it turned back around, but the car does stall, has to get it refired, and now has to rejoin the circuit. A pirouette, exit stage left. And now Slapshot finds himself in a mess back behind the Mustangs. Oh, actually quite a ways back behind. We lost Slapshot somewhere in the mix there. We'll pick him up in a little bit though, once the timing boards get reconfigured. Man, this has been a wild race. We're only 7 minutes in. Do need to get a bit of water. It's a bit early for me to be getting some water. Brute with Ketu. Your mom dropping a couple positions there. Now Douglas firmly in this fight. Your mom now defensive into turn 1 as Douglas will try and move over and get that position alongside. What has happened to the 11? And we've got another off there. That's Salinas in the worst spot to have that incident. We'll get it righted, rejoin the circuit. The 7 of Marvy also involved, going for a bit of a wild ride, somehow holds on to it. And unsure of exactly what is going on back here, but we've got cars off all over the place. Autry off, Rowden off. The number, which Mustang is that? There is a Mustang that is off. Can't exactly tell which one is. It is definitely kicking off, and we've got elbows out fighting between Platypus and Ouroboros for P4 right behind Aramage. This is still a fight for P3. And the fight for the lead is also on too. We've got battles all over the place for position, and I haven't even been able to check in on our AM field yet. Hopefully I'll have the opportunity here shortly. Battle for the lead between Prieto and Ormiston. Ormiston has the fastest lap, wants to get this lead back. Prieto now taking evasive maneuvers, trying to break the toe. Not let Ormiston get within that slipstream. Aramage now hoping that the two behind, or Aramage now trying to break the toe down the straight. Ouroboros wants to maybe take that opportunity and get lined up on the outside. No, will not get that opportunity. It does try to get a better run out of turn 1. Platypus not going to give up the inside for turn 3, as it is a prime overtaking opportunity. And what have we had happen up at the front? No, not a swap of position. Platypus defensive into 3. Ouroboros may get the cutback though, may have a run into 4. I think he's fully alongside. Aramage is loving every single bit of this, as it allows him to get a bit of breathing room to try and pull away from those drivers behind. Now is Platypus going to be able to slot far enough ahead? And makes Ouroboros go too deep, a bit of a slide through 4, and that's going to give Platypus a spot right back. Textbook old switcheroo. Force the driver behind to go a bit too deep. Now Platypus almost goes too deep into 6. Both of them getting very brave onto the curbing at the exit of 6, now through 7 and 8. Still just running one behind the other. This battle for the lead also heating up. Ormiston well within that slipstream range. Just needs to get a better run out of the final corner. Could have an overtaking opportunity lined up at turn 1, but I think Prieto wins that battle. 4/10, the gap growing slightly. And as they come into turn 1, number 15 of Ricky Bobby and the Aston Martin off yet again. Actually, not yet again. I think that may be the first spin there. The number 40 of Darmok around at turn 4. This battle for the lead still heating up. Ouroboros and Platypus battling for P4. Still, is this going to be an exact repeat of what we saw on the previous lap? Need to make sure that our leaders are not swapping position. No, Ouroboros gets a better run, and this time Ouroboros, I don't think, going to make the same mistake twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It is not going to make the same mistake, but a big slide, trying to get too eager on the throttle, may open the door for Platypus right back up. And I think that is going to open that door right back up. Still, side by side, these two, as they make a touch of contact. Ouroboros out into the sand, is going to lose a touch of time, but ultimately not going to be too much. No time that Ouroboros is not going to be able to close back up. Prieto and Ormiston, battle for the lead still going on. Ormiston, a bit of a wiggle through the penultimate corner. Still just has to try and get the better exit out of the corners. Corner exit speed, trying to close that gap, get the run with the slipstream is going to be crucial for Ormiston to get this overtake done. Also, the possibility of an overtake in the pit lane, as we have seen these two go at it in the pit lane before. Ormiston is able to stay out though. Checking in with our AM leader, he's got a whole field of pros behind Francisco, Harold, Trixit, Douglas, all lined up behind. Douglas has actually gone way down the order, was battling with the NSX of Ketu, and is now fallen way down and goes very far to the outside. The 999 of Sierra around at the final corner. And I think just trying to push too hard, go too far outside with the track limits. The wet conditions not really going to allow you to do that like you would in the wet. Very easy to just lose control of the car. And boy, are they queued up behind. Battle here between Francisco and Harold. Harold in the Aston Martin may look for a dive into turn 4. No, it does not materialize. Does have the opportunity of trying to get a better run, but that is not going to come. And Trixit is now going to apply pressure from behind. Tries to get the move lined up for the inside, not going to work. Slapshot also in this fight. Douglas right behind quite a few of our top drivers. Just with a stroke of bad luck and maybe just a little bit of an accident, and find themselves down the order from where they qualified. These two, just like in Season 3, running one behind the other. This time both in the same car though. And we will see if Ormiston is going to be able to pull this overtake off. Prieto actually ended up taking that fastest lap of the race back. Ormiston still just slot in right behind in that slipstream range. The battle between Platypus and Ouroboros continues. The gap to Aramich has grown with this fight though. And your mom with the teammate to Platypus, the Mercedes of Iceberg right behind. And Giant in the Ford Mustang also lined up right behind this fight as well, looking to pick up the scraps should there be any lying around. Side by side, these two go into turn 4. Iceberg trying to get the cutback, the old switcheroo out of 4, not going to work that time. Battle for the lead. Hate jumping off of a battle, but when you've got a battle for the lead this close, you kind of have to. Ormiston still just trying to get the better run. Prieto able to open the gap slightly. And no change of position there. Although I don't want to get off of it though, because Ormiston may have a run up into turn 3. He's at least close enough to go for the dive bomb. We'll see how defensive Prieto goes. Goes very defensive. Is Ormiston going to be able to snatch the old switcheroo? He may barely be able to get a nose. No, he is not. He's a lot closer though. Prieto feels the pressure, goes defensive, closes off the run from Ormiston on the inside, forces him to try and go around the outside. Maybe we'll try the old switcheroo here yet again. The track is now damp and drying. Wet tires going to become a bit of a problem, and I think we are going to see slick tires at the pit stop. Now, when do you take the pit stop? Do you keep on these tires as long as possible? Now those wet tires starting to show they are not really going to be the best tire for too much longer, as not much spray left. There is still a little bit. Ormiston had a big slide entering the pit lane. That's not what Prieto wanted there. I guess was not expecting the driver to be entering the pit lane. And Ormiston just playing chess, not checkers there, finds a way around. And that's, I think, Ormiston sitting there in the car saying, well, that was a bit easier than I expected. And now Prieto will try and fight that back. Brute into the pit lane with Ketu right behind. Are we going to see these drivers come in on slicks? Also, Iceberg. Giant stays out. Your mom comes in. Oh, it's quite a few coming into the pit lane. as it is officially the party in the pit lane, as there is a large group of cars entering. We'll see if we have any more takers. The 12 of Nightwalker coming into the pit lane. Hopefully we don't get any stop and go penalties for speeding. But our leaders stay out for now. Prieto right back on the heels of Ormiston and does have the opportunity for the overtake. And Slick Tires just transitioned to be the Optimum tire. So that's when everybody decided to come in. And I think both of these drivers are going to come into the pit lane. Ormiston with Prieto right behind. The number 40 gets a penalty for speeding in pit lane. That is the BMW of Darmok. And hopefully no speeding penalties for these two. Is that Aramich making an overtake in the pit lane, making it past the Ferrari of Tyler James? I believe it was. Another McLaren in Bielstein colors coming in behind. I think that is the McLaren of Profit. The Mustang of Giant coming in. And then the Aston Martin of Harrell and the McLaren of Slapshot also coming into the pit lane. And not many, I don't think, actually no, Manelli came into the pit lane, so our AM leader has come in. Tychopath also came in and not far behind the leader, as Manelli just came out of turn 4 there. Now Slick Tires are going to be a bit of a gamble, as they are not going to be, they are going to be the Optimum tire, technically faster than wet tires, but they're still going to be a bit tricky here in damp conditions. Need the sun to come out to really start drying the track and start to find some speed, but as you can see the reflection on the curbs, those curbs are still going to be very, very slick. Now the battle for the lead was the battle for the lead. Ormiston, I think, got a much better stop than Prieto, as that gap has grown quite a bit. Aramich behind, going past the Mustang of Langley. And Brute a ways back as well. Pit stops the great equalizer, just like the rain, as we've actually seen a good amount of our field spread out. Dingham peels off and comes into the pit lane. Douglas comes into the pit lane. The Aston Martin of Schwartz coming into the pit lane. Cave staying out in the Mustang. And Ouroboros currently scored the leader, still out. Opting not to come in yet. And we got a battle here, as what has happened, Slap with a bit of a wiggle, still on wet tires, as those wet tires are probably absolutely useless now. And Giant with damage on that Mustang. Brute, is Brute coming back into the pit lane? Yes, he is. Did he go back out on wets? Shouldn't have, but that could have been the issue. And Ormiston with a bit of an issue here, as he's got traffic all over, desperately trying to find a way through. The 11 of, I believe that was the 11 of Salinas, yes, does yield to the leader, or what was the leader. Ouroboros and Platypus both coming into the pit lane in their battle, albeit there was a bit of a gap in between the two. Mad Psycaster exits the track and comes into the pit lane. We'll see if Cave decides to come into the pit lane. Yes, does decide to come into the pit lane. So that does mean that Ormiston should be scored the leader in early pit stops, early days for these pit stops. yes, Brute was on the wet tires, so just a pit stop mishap, but with changing conditions like these, making sure that pit strategy is correct is sometimes a bit of a difficult thing to do. Sometimes you just forget about it, and then you come into the pit lane, put tires on, and oh man, I'm on wets. That's not good. That's not what's supposed to happen. Tricks it behind Harrell here. As both these drivers going around the Ferrari of Tyler James and coming into turn one, tricks it right on the heels of the Aston Martin. Just not able to get the run out of turn one. Devin Lingard in the Ferrari still yet to come into the pit lane, likely having a hell of a time on those wet tires. Slapshot also still to come into the pit lane. Don't know what strategy he's going for, possibly hoping for another spurt of rain at the very end of the race and go for the no stop, but you still have to come into the pit lane, so that strategy doesn't work. Tricks it now, dropping it back off of the Aston Martin of Harrell. McLaren Tyco Path, as they are closing in on the leading AM driver. This is your fight for the AM podium. Schwartz and the Aston Martin right there behind as well. Bit of a slide from Leclerc through turn 6. Trying to run away from Tyco Path in the McLaren, but also trying to close up on Manelli, the AM leader, up ahead. Manelli right behind the pro driver of Giant, who does have some damage. And Manelli having to go around the outside. That is not going to help Manelli one bit, especially being out on slick tires and on that wet paint, and that is going to put Leclerc up into the lead in AM. And I can assure you that Manelli is not very happy about that, but they are still in a fight for the overall position. And still, Giant causing a bit of a mix-up as Manelli now drops back another position, and it's going to be the McLaren of Tyco Path up into P2 for the AM field. And Manelli, who pretty much had it locked down in AM, is now going to have to try and fight that back. Goes for a very deep lunge into turn 3 and desperately trying to get onto the power. That is very odd for Slapshot saying that the pit stop didn't count. Manelli now defensive against the Porsche of Robinson behind. Manelli desperately trying to get back into the lead in AM, as Leclerc is now riding off into the sunset with open clean air. Manelli does have the 31 Porsche of Robinson, absolutely giving him a hard time. Manelli says, go on then. If you want to go for it, go for it. The number 69. McLaren of Profit around at the final corner. Now Manelli is going to hope for here. The best scenario for Manelli is going to be that the Porsche of Robinson starts to disrupt both Tyco Path and Leclerc up ahead. But Manelli's still not going to be very happy about that. The 7 of Marvey off in the final corner. And F-bomb trying to find a way past the AM driver of Schwartz, who is just outside of the podium spots in AM. And know what has happened. Your mom around gets it righted. Who else involved in that incident? There's another Mustang there. It's the number 14 of Bradzilla. And the 40 of Darmok around at turn 1. We've got a few incidents of drivers off in various places around the track. Devin Lingard trying to chase the NSX of Ketu, currently P6. Harrell with Douglas and Trixit behind. And the track is starting to dry, but still no sunlight. And we are going to be dry to the end. But if we get a bit of break in the clouds, no, Harrell makes a big mistake. At 1, gets too much of the sausage curve that's going to open the door for Douglas to get that position, has to slot back in and try and do some damage control, keep Trixit from popping away with a position there, but Trixit goes up the inside. Harrell tries to get a very wide run, carry more speed out of turn 3, but is ultimately not going to do much for him. It is now down a couple positions. Leclerc up ahead behind the Ferrari of Tyler James, currently the AM leader. Not currently scored the AM leader, as Devin Lingard in the Ferrari still yet to come into the pit lane. Leclerc still out and has Tyler James to the outside. Will slightly disrupt Leclerc, is actually not going to be a bit more than slightly disrupt, as did have to get off the racing line, and then a bit of a slide through 6. As Tycho Path does the exact same thing. Tycho Path trying to chase down the number 51 Ferrari of Leclerc, and Manelli about 2 seconds back, still trying to reclaim lost positions. Back on this fight between Douglas, Trixit, and Harrell. Not so much between Douglas anymore, it's more so between Trixit and Harrell. The fight for P8 in the pro field and overall. Robinson comes into the pit lane, was clear. I can assure you that Manelli is likely not going to be too happy about that. Wonder if maybe doesn't have enough fuel in the car. Harrell looking for an opportunity into 4. It's not going to come though. And just behind, Dingham, P11, fending off Mad Sycaster and Iceberg. As our leaders have begun to spread out apart from each other a little bit. Not so much a battle for the lead anymore. Have a good one, Lucas. Thank you for tuning in. The 31 of Robinson gets a drive, or a 30-second stop and go for speeding in pit lane. Getting a bit dicey here as a 7-11 forcing Mad Sycaster and Iceberg and your mom to go narrow. This is going to be a 4-way fight in the pro field. Marby into the pit lane. That was the 7-11 of Rogue. It is getting a bit tight behind. Your mom wants to try and get a nose on the inside. Into turn 3. Goes for the lunge. And Iceberg did not afford the space. Iceberg goes around off the nose of your mom. Got the nose in there, and that's not the way that he wanted to take it. The stewards are definitely going to be looking at that one. And we'll see if Iceberg is able to live that one down later tonight. Douglas with Trixit closing in now. Harrell still well in this fight. Manelli back onto the AM podium after Robinson ended up going into the pit lane. And I can assure you that Manelli is not going to be too happy about that, saying all that for you to just come back into the pits in front of me. The 31 still with that 30-second stop and go penalty to serve. And what has happened to Ormiston? Has it been a mistake at turn 1? I think he may have just gone around on his own if he got too wide. Down to P5. That promotes Aramich up to P2. And Ouroboros P3, Platypus P4. And that knocks Ormiston down to P5. We'll see if he stays there though. Battle here between Douglas, Trixit, and Harrell. To come down through turn 4, as we are approaching 10 minutes left of this race, which does give us about 6 or 7 laps or so. The number 13 off at turn 1. That is the number 13 of Tyler James. Team figuring it out. That is definitely figuring it out. And Harold trying to find a nose at the inside of Trixit for the penultimate corner, ultimately does not find the opportunity. The 14 of Bradzilla around at turn 3. Ultimately goes back into the pit lane. 420 of Mad Sidecaster with Slapshot right behind. Actually, not Slapshot, this is Your Mom and the McLaren right behind. And what has happened to Leclerc? Off and around on his own, trying to get it righted as Tychopath takes the lead in AM. I wonder if there was some contact there. I don't really think there was, but if there was, it will be reported. The stewards will be looking at it later, but unfortunate for Leclerc, had managed to find himself in very easy position to take home the win in this race. The F-bomb had a bit of a wiggle coming through 3, I think maybe in anticipation. Tychopath just up ahead. This win is not out of the sights and not out of the possibility for Manelli. Definitely could have a potential to get this lead back. It's clear air between himself and Tychopath, the leader. And Manelli set the pole position for the AM field. Really is going to want to get this position back. We'll see if he can chase him down. It's Manelli just coming over the crest behind the McLaren that we are currently watching now. Goes wide into the final corner. Don't want to do that too much. Don't want to risk getting a drive-through penalty for track limits, especially not this late in the race. Ketu made a mistake and is now down a few positions. Douglas moves up into P6 and Ketu makes another big mistake. I think the tires are going to be very hot, but just unable to get the power down at turn 3 and will lose a position to Harrell. So some late race chaos as we have some very big shakeups for position. And Trix had almost lost it at turn 4 there. What a save, just getting off the throttle and living another day. While it is going to open up the gap to the car ahead, is better than trying to power through it. That's when you really start to make those poor mistakes. Mad Sidecaster and Your Mom. Mom of the McLaren still trying to find a way past. The opportunity may arise here at 6 and 7. Through 7 still tries to get the better run, but is not going to come yet. And what has happened here? Manelli pushing too hard, goes around, and is now going to be off of the AM podium. Was chasing down the leader of Tychopath and was closing that gap, but I think there's too little, or just too much and too far. Found the limit, did Manelli, and is now off the podium and is not going to have enough time to regain those positions and get that spot back. Wellness check on Prieto. Out in front in no man's land, all on his own with Aramich. Now P2 after that mistake from Ormiston. And likely our top 5 has been set, but we've seen a lot of independent mistakes as these greasy conditions, track not fully dry, not necessarily wet either. And no sunlight has come to really warm the track up and dry it off. Trixit gets the old switcheroo, takes the position away from Harrell. They are still nose to tail. These two have been racing for quite some time. Have honestly raced their way up the order, as they have been racing one beside the other, one in front of the other, one behind the other, but they've been gaining positions the whole time, as Harrell somehow held on to it, almost making the same deadly mistake that we have seen many times throughout this race tonight, getting too far on the wet outside painted tarmac of the final corner, and ultimately went for a ride, but stayed on. It wasn't 8 seconds, but it was a hell of a rodeo. Guzman actually going past the Mustang of Chandler, has F-bomb behind, and Schwartz also behind. Tychopath found himself in the AM lead with Schwartz in P2 and Cave in P3. Douglas trying to pull away from these two behind. We were just on board with them, but the battle just continues. Mad Sycaster still trying to chase down Dingham, get another position away. We've got about 3 or 4 more laps left in this race. Some gaps starting to tighten up, but I do believe that the AM field, or the AM podium, is going to be set. But that does not mean that there are no more mistakes that can arise in these last few laps. As there are mistakes that can happen, and they're going to be those dumb mistakes. There's no real way around it. Just maybe pushing a little bit too hard this late in the race. And well, yes, you could just find the limit and slightly overstep it. But if you just go a touch too far, you don't really have any need to, and that ends up getting you maybe 2 tires in the grass, 2 tires on the painted tarmac. It's actually not greasy anymore. We've transitioned from green to fast, and that's actually going to make things a lot nicer to drive. And I think the tires may actually begin to hold some heat. Now the drivers have had to account for cooler conditions with wet and damp conditions, as the 33 of Devin Lingard was around at the final corner. Mad Sycaster closing up onto the back of Dingham. And who is that off just ahead? Can't tell if that was a slide or if that was a pit lane entry. It's the number 700 of Rowden, I believe. It may have just been a slide into the pit lane. But now Dingham, Mad Sycaster, and your mom, all 3 fighting for position here. There's a few more fights for position back behind. Francisco with Tychopath behind. Now the painted track is dry, and we have optimum conditions, as if there's any time to push, it's going to be now. Benelli just outside of the podium positions. Cave a good ways up the track, and with the track conditions improving, those dumb mistakes likely not going to be as much of an occurrence anymore. Now, big developing opportunity here. Platypus, opportunity for a podium. If he can catch up to the McLaren of Ouroboros just up ahead, he's within the slipstream range. We could have a swap of position on the podium here on the final 2 laps, as Prieto is going to bring us to the white flag at the end of this lap. Platypus will try and chase down Ouroboros. Dingham with Mad Sidecaster behind, and your mom bringing up the rear in this 3-car fight. Tychopath on his own has a bit of traffic, but no real contestants for the AM lead. Just needs to bring it home 2 more laps. Platypus absolutely pushing with everything he's got to try and get this position taken back. Not even taken back, just to get this position away from Ouroboros and get Platypus a step onto the podium. This will start their final lap of the race. The leader has just crossed the start-finish line with Aramich in P2. Aramich does hold the fastest lap of the race. It's Prieto in the lead. The 10 of Ketu comes into the pit lane at the very end. Maybe he didn't have enough fuel left in the car. But we are going to come to the checkered flag this time. Staying on with this fight for the last spot on the podium. We'll do a quick check onto Mad Sidecaster and your mom as they come into the final corner. Back on with this fight for the pro podium. Platypus just leaving the flashers on, trying to get some sort of a mistake from Ouroboros into 4. It's not really going to arise. Bit of a wiggle from Platypus out of 4. They come through 5 and into 6. Prieto just up ahead with some traffic. Platypus needs a crazy run or a crazy dive bomb as they come to the final 2 corners. This is still the battle for the podium position, the final spot on the podium, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Prieto comes across the line and takes the win in round number 3. Aramich P2 and Ouroboros will bring home P3. Platypus will bring home P4. And Ormiston will end up bringing home P5. Michael D and Sierra side by side up ahead. That was actually a fight for position. Michael D ended up getting the position away. Douglas next across the line with Trixit right behind. I don't think that Trixit is going to be able to get it. Douglas brings home P6, Trixit P7. Dingham looking to bring home P8. Right behind them, the drag race to the line. Mad Sidecaster versus your mom. Mad Sidecaster's gonna have it. Mad Sidecaster P9, your mom P10. Iceberg P11. Francisco will bring home P12, and Tychopath will bring home the AM win in the McLaren. F-Bomb will bring home P14. Guzman P15. Schwartz will bring home P2 for AM. Cabe P3 in AM. Tyler James right alongside. Harrell will bring home P18. Benelli will bring home P19 as Zoanom actually gets the position away and goes across the nose. Nate will bring home P20. Giant P21. Scroll P22. And these two, although I don't think they're in a fight anymore, will be our last 2 across the line. Sierra slots in ahead. But it is Prieto with the win. Aramich P2, Ouroboros P3, Platypus P4. In AM, Tycho Path takes the win. Schwartz P2, Cade P3. Manelli, your pole sitter, just with some bad luck that race, was not able to put it together. That's going to bring an end to tonight's coverage. Congratulations to those drivers on the podium. And it's Prieto taking home the overall win tonight. Don't go anywhere just yet. We will find somebody to raid. Thank you all for tuning in. If you would like what you've seen and you'd like to join the GoFast Racing Discord, you can do so with the Twitch chat or the chat in my Twitch chat, in the Discord link in my Twitch chat. And if you would like to support me, you can follow. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you would like to subscribe to the Twitch or subscribe to the YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps keep the streams good to go and also helps me get more equipment. Stick with me for just a moment. We are going to raid Sim Racing Alliance. They're actually getting ready to start with a race at Paul Ricard. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week for round 4. Have a good night.